action. Hi, my name is Brianna and I am a cottage baker. I own Butternut Bakery in Westminster, Colorado. I am the owner and head baker at Butternut Bakery. Today I'm going to be making one of my favorite fall recipes, Biscoff banana nut bread. I'm going to add in some golden raisins today too, just because I like them. And we'll talk about some variations that you might choose to use when you're baking this recipe. So things that you will need, obviously bananas, brown sugar or granulated sugar. I'm going to use a combination today. Your favorite mix-ins, I have walnuts and golden raisins. Flour, we'll talk a little bit about that. Melted butter, the key ingredient, Biscoff cookie butter or any brand of cookie butter that you can find. You can also substitute almond butter or favorite nut butter, peanut butter would work really well here as well. Salt, a couple flavors, pure vanilla extract, and I like to use just a little bit of almond extract as well. I've got some cinnamon and a secret ingredient that we'll talk about, a couple eggs, and baking soda for our leavening agent as well. So let's get started. With any quick bread, the beauty of it is that you're going to be putting it together and putting it straight into the oven. Speaking of which, preheat your oven to 350 degrees. We're in Denver, we're a little bit high altitude, so sometimes your quick breads will benefit from baking at a slightly higher temperature. So I usually set my oven here to 365 degrees, but anywhere 350 to 365, you're golden. So in a large bowl, you're gonna need 2 bowls for this recipe, but in your largest bowl, you're gonna begin with your bananas. And I like to measure using a food scale. I find that this eliminates the need for having lots of measuring cups and spoons on hand. And once you get used to it, I promise you're gonna love it. So we'll leave a link in the description. This is my favorite food scale. It comes in a variety of colors. I have all of them. So today we're going to be using good old silver. So in your large bowl, you're going to use your handy dandy fork to mash up your bananas. You can leave some large chunks there, but on the whole, you're going to want it to be nice and smooth before we add anything else in. Just a little note about bananas. When I was kind of researching this recipe and preparing it, I was reading that bananas contain tryptophan, which is kind of a precursor to serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone. So maybe that's kind of why fall time, it's getting dark earlier, getting cold out, maybe feeling a little depressed. We turn to comfort foods like banana bread to feel a little bit better. I know I feel better after eating some delicious banana bread. On the note of bananas, the darker the better really for banana bread. So as a banana matures, it'll go from a green color to kind of a yellow color to then actually a black color. And don't be afraid of that. That is the best time to use your bananas for banana bread. So as they're starting to turn a corner, if you're not ready to make your banana bread and they're starting to get black, stick them in a freezer-proof bag, put them in the freezer, and then defrost them at either room temperature, or you can kind of nuke them in the microwave for a little bit to be able to work with them. But as they transition and mature, basically what's happening is the starch within the banana is breaking down and forming sugars, or increasing the sugar content. So they actually become tastier for baking purposes as they get darker. And once you get that kind of mashed up, there can be larger chunks, then you're gonna start adding your sugars. And quick breads are kind of fun because you combine wet ingredients and then you combine your dry ingredients, mix them together, lastly fold in your additives, and you're ready to bake. So very, very simple. Anyone can do it. A great project to do with your children or with family members that are maybe new to baking. So next what we're going to add in is our melted butter. You wanna have this melted, but somewhere near room temperature. You don't want it to be extremely hot still from the microwave because it can start to kind of cook our eggs a little bit faster than we would like them to. So we're going to dump in our butter. And I'm going to use 2 types of sugar today. white granulated sugar and also brown sugar. I like the kind of molasses flavor that the brown sugar contributes to this recipe, but you certainly can get away with just using one or the other. So the granulated sugar is going to go in. We're also going to pour in our brown sugar. And we're going to give this a whisk just to combine. Kind of want to break up any larger bits of brown sugar that kind of might pack together. And next we'll be adding in our eggs. It's a good idea to pay attention to recipes when it talks about using room temperature ingredients, especially room temperature eggs. It helps them to really combine into the rest of the ingredients a little bit better. So you don't want big temperature differences or extremes when you're baking a quick bread. I like to crack my eggs on the counter. It helps me to prevent shells from getting into my batter. So just a good whack and crack, and there we go. We're gonna whisk to combine these, and then we're also gonna add in a little bit of our vanilla extract and almond extract, probably about a teaspoon of each if you'd like. I don't measure these typically, but you're going for about 5 grams of each. If you just have vanilla extract, that's perfectly fine. I just like the subtle flavor that the almond extract contributes as well. Little splash of that. All right, we're gonna whisk this around just till it's nice and combined. And I still do have some maybe pea-sized chunks of banana in there. That's perfectly fine too. You just don't want a whole half a banana circling around in there. So as I mentioned, we're gonna be making a quick bread. And so that is as opposed to a yeasted bread, as opposed to a sourdough bread. So this is the fastest way to make bread. And we do that by using chemical leaveners. So today we're gonna be using baking soda. Baking soda is a little bit different than baking powder. Baking powder can leaven all on its own without the need to have an acidifying agent. But baking soda is alkaline, and so it needs to combine with a base in order to create the chemical reaction, which will let it release carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide is what leavens your dough. So we're gonna be using about a teaspoon of that today as well. So I've got this nice and incorporated. I'm just gonna set this off to the side, and we're gonna work on our dry mixture here. So this is where I would really encourage measuring. You will get much more consistent results out of your baking if you measure your flour. Depending on the humidity, depending on the type of flour that you're using volume measuring spoons like cups to measure your flour can really result in a wide range of actual ingredient that you put into your recipe, and that can really change the final outcome of your bread. So here we're going to be using all-purpose flour, and I'm actually going to sub in a little bit of spelt flour because I really love it. And spelt has a little bit of a nutty flavor as well, which I think works well with the banana bread that we're making. But you certainly could use whole wheat flour if you have some on hand. You could substitute in a little bit of rye flour as well. So you don't want to, as a general rule, you'll start changing textures if you are using more than about 20% or substituting in about more than 20% of an alternative flour. All right, so we're just going to combine those two flours using a whisk. This is a little Danish dough hook mixer that I got. I quite like it. All right, so to this, we are going to add our leavening agent. In this case, like I said, baking soda. We're gonna do a teaspoon of baking soda. I've actually increased this recipe just for the demonstration, so I'm gonna do a teaspoon and a fourth here because I'm gonna show you a couple variations of how you can bake this. So we've got our baking soda in there, and I'm using my food scale to kind of measure out. So I know that my pinch is about 5 grams or a teaspoon of salt, so I'm going to give it a real good pinch there. Perfect. And I also have a teaspoon of cinnamon and my secret ingredient, an 1/8 teaspoon of Cayenne Red Pepper. It's certainly optional. You don't have to use it at all. It's not going to make your bread spicy. It's just going to add just another layer of complexity. Chili or hot piquant flavor blends really well with the flavor of banana. So we're just going to add that in. It just gives it that little thing that your friends tried and they say, what's in here? There's something in here. I can't put my finger on it. And you're gonna know what it is, but it'll be our secret. So I'm just whisking that around, and I'm also just kind of whisking the bowl. We really want to combine this well. Now the final step here is just that we add our dry to our wet ingredients, and then we fold them together. We don't need to aggressively combine them. We just want to make sure that all of our flour is hydrated properly. And I'm going to dump in our flour mixture here. Now we're just going to briefly soften our cookie butter because mine's a little bit stiff, you can kind of see, and we want to be able to swirl this into our batter as well. So just about 5-10 seconds in the microwave just to soften this up. You don't want to totally melt it, but just to get it a little looser is going to be perfect for adding this in. All right, so as we're just kind of combining that together, really we're just trying to commingle the wet with the dry without doing really any aggressive mixing. We're just folding them together. All right, now I'm gonna add in my cookie butter. And again, just folding till this is nice and combined. This is what I love about quick breads, is that once you have the basic concept down of getting your wet ingredients together, your dry ingredients together, really there are so many different options as far as how you would like to flavor your banana bread. You can also substitute in pumpkin if you need to, if you're low on bananas or you don't have enough or they're not quite ripe. You can also substitute in different additives. So like I said, today I'm going to be using walnuts and a little bit of golden raisins, 2 ounces of golden raisins, 3 ounces of walnuts. But really you can substitute in whatever you like. Butterscotch baking chips would work really well in here, as well as some caramel baking chips. I think would be a fantastic addition to this recipe. You could use pecans, hazelnuts. If you're a fan of Nutella, you could swap out the cookie butter, add some Nutella, some crushed hazelnuts, and have a delicious variation on this recipe as well. So to this, I am just going to add in our extra bits here. And again, just folding until combined. And so this is about the consistency that you really want any quick bread to be. It'll kind of just plop back into the pan, but it's not flowing like a batter. It's not very liquidy, but it's also not very stiff like you have to knead it. So this is exactly what we're looking for here. And I'm just gonna stop there. We don't wanna overmix this. Now, I have prepared a baking pan here. I've used a little bit of parchment paper and I've greased it. A fun little trick that I have learned from other YouTubers is to use these little office clips. Yes, they can go in the oven, and they work great at kind of holding your parchment paper in place while you're trying to pour this batter in. So quick breads are fabulous because they're so versatile. They can be made into muffins. They can be made just into a traditional loaf. You can also use these mini muffin pans. I love this for if I know for sure I'm going to be giving the breads away as little gifts. These fit about 200 grams of batter per muffin pan. And so this recipe here will make you about 4 mini muffin pans if you would like, or mini loaves. Today I'm going to be making some little mini muffins and then a traditional larger style loaf. So to do this, what I like to do is use my food scale. I know that these mini muffin tins fit about 1 ounce of batter, or 28 grams, basically 2 tablespoons. If you don't have a food scale, you could just use 2 tablespoons. So I'm just gonna remove this. And then from that, I'm just going to use a little handy dandy ice cream scoop here, and it measures out exactly 28 grams. And I'm just gonna plop that down. What's great about this is that they make excellent muffins all on their own, but you can take it to the next level if you want to make a cream cheese cookie butter frosting and turn them into Biscoff cookie butter banana bread cupcakes. Perfect. So we'll give those just a little tap just to kind of help them settle a little bit there. And we'll put these in the oven at the same temperature, but we're just gonna bake these for about 12 to 15 minutes, checking at 12 minutes and moving to 15 minutes if they still aren't really brown on the top or if they look like they've got some raw batter still in the center. So we'll set that off to the side. I'm gonna use the rest of this batter to fill my loaf pan. Okay. So that's in there. Now we are going to take a little extra cookie butter because you can never have too much cookie butter. That is a fact. Well, you probably shouldn't take that literally because if you put in the whole jar, that might change the consistency of the bake. So just a couple tablespoons. This is the part of baking that I love where you really don't need to measure, just so long as you're kind of in the neighborhood. So 2 good plops of cookie butter in there. And I'm gonna take an offset spatula. You can use a spoon, you can use a fork, you can use your finger, you can use whatever implement you would like. And all we're gonna be doing here is just kind of winding this around, swirling it down into our batter to make this beautiful cookie butter swirl banana nut loaf. I'm not digging all the way down to the bottom of the loaf, but it is okay to kind of press some of that cookie butter down in so we have some filling in the middle as well, okay? And then I'm just gonna take that and just kind of smooth it over, and we're gonna pop this one in the oven. We're gonna check it after about 40 minutes, but it might need to go as long as 50 or 55 minutes, depending on your oven, depending on your altitude and how quickly it bakes. What we're gonna be looking for is for a toothpick to come out clean or just with a couple tiny little crumbs. But if you have an instant read thermometer, that is really the best way to know if your loaf is done. There is nothing more disappointing than smelling this delicious loaf baking, thinking it's done, doing the toothpick test, and then cutting into the center a few hours after it's cooled and realizing that it's still totally raw. So if you can use an instant read thermometer, you're looking for 190 degrees. You don't really want it to go over that because at 190, it's perfectly baked, but it's gonna retain some of that moisture and it's gonna keep that bread staying fresher longer, even sitting out at room temperature in a sealed container. So we're gonna pop these into the oven. So here we have out of the oven our beautiful little muffins, soon to be cupcakes, and our glorious Biscoff cookie butter banana nut loaf. This guy took about 60 minutes today to bake. Again, I just pulled it at 50, checked it with my instant read thermometer, still wasn't baked yet, so I popped it back in. It's important to tent a little bit of tin foil over it if you start to notice that the surface of your bread is getting too dark, but I think we've got a lovely color on this, and if you can see, we've got some nice variation. That's the cookie butter swirl mixed in there that kind of creates that different level of chocolatey color. So as that was baking, I just whipped up a very simple frosting, a little bit of room temperature butter, some powdered sugar, and cookie butter. And really, there's no recipe for this. It is just a matter of whisking it around, or actually I used a hand mixer. Hand mix it around till you get the consistency of frosting. Little pinch of salt in there as well. So now for the fun part. Just going to create some little shapes on top of these muffins to elevate them to a cupcake. Thank you so much for watching. I enjoyed baking with you today. I hope that this recipe inspires you to make your own Biscoff cookie butter banana nut loaf. These cupcakes are simply delicious and very fun to share with friends and family. If you liked my video, please hit like and subscribe. I hope to do more of these in the future, so let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. You can find the recipe in the description. Again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being with me today.